So I was talking to someone last week, and I was like, hey, I started this whole new little podcast thing. I got two homies with me, and we're kind of talking about current events and a bunch of other stuff. And, they're executives, they're leaders. They've been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years. And then it's me. Oh, cool, man. What's the name of this podcast? And I say DTF on a podcast. And, I kind of got a weird look. And I think apparently there is a phrase known as DTF somewhere that came, actually, I was informed that it came from Jersey Shore. So you remember?
Yeah, I remember that show.
So there was the GTL,
yeah.
Gym Tan Laundry, right? That's what the guys always did on the Jersey Shore, on MTV, of course. And then apparently in this episode, they're the ones that coined the phrase DTF. Now,
wait, did they know our names back then? No,
they didn't. They didn't actually. No, not at all. I was probably in junior high, maybe high school, and I felt kind of sad to know that people are mistaking the name of our initials, Damien, Troy, and Fern, with this rated R phrase. But anyways.
It's kind of funny because we didn't have a name for this podcast. We just took our initials and dropped it in and said, hey, Damien, Troy, and Fern on a podcast.
Yeah.
And it kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll keep it because I don't know if we really have another name to go by.
I don't know. I don't know if I have the cycles to come up with another name. But if I don't, I think we're good with what it is. So it's kind of interesting when you tell people it's called DTF on a podcast. But I don't know. Maybe we'll change it. Maybe we won't. I think maybe the name is what got a lot of people to click originally. So now we have to continue the momentum. So that's what we're going to do today. So today, this is officially episode 2, DTF on a podcast. So today is Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
The party of my peoples. I'm the only one that can say that. So it's the party of my peoples. And there's no better way to party on a Cinco de Mayo if you're in tech and security other than listening to DTF on a podcast. So today what we're going to talk about is last week, RSA. I didn't go. I didn't want to spend the money. I'm not sure it's worth the money. We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about people in North Korea scamming people in the U.S., taking their jobs.
Well, I don't know if they're taking their jobs. They're pretending to be Americans taking jobs to fund maybe the North Korean government. It's a cool topic. We'll get into that one.
Yep. So there's that. And then the last one we're going to talk about is people that are hijacking Zoom calls.
Oh, yeah. That's also originated from North Korea, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, no, we have one more. We have an S3 bucket that was left open last week.
Oh, yes. So they were taking the pictures of screen captures, right?
Right. Of another remote worker thing. So I think a pretty good lineup today.
Yeah, it's a great lineup, especially going into RSA. I'm anxious to hear you guys' perspective on that.
Coming out of RSA. Well, you're talking about Cinco de Mayo. I would say last week, a lot of people view it as what? It's a really big cybersecurity conference. Still called RSA.
It's the largest, right? Largest one.
Yeah, I think it's the largest one. But it's still called. Why is it called RSA?
Yeah, RSA goes back to the encryption company, and that was somebody's initials as well, RSA. But it was named after the RSA encryption company back in the day, tokenization encryption.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't associate it with that company anymore. I think RSA got acquired by EMC. EMC got acquired by Dell. I think Dell then sold RSA, and so the company's still around, still a cybersecurity company. But anyways, this is a really large cybersecurity conference where a lot of people go to stay up to date.
Party.
I don't know about partying. I'd say networking.
Yeah.
Get sick. Troy, I heard you're feeling under the weather. How are you doing today?
Much better today. Yeah, last Friday was a bit rough, but I think this was the first time in 10 years that I was actually in my hotel room before 11 p.m. every night. So those late night parties were very tempting, and my phone was buzzing all night, but I did decline that, and I crashed early just to try to avoid that fatigue.
Yeah. So to give you a little bit of an idea what our schedules look like, Fern, and I'm pretty sure Troy's schedule is the same way. It starts really early. You may have a breakfast meeting. The unfortunate part for me is that I still have to run a day-to-day security operations team. So a lot of early meetings still happening. And then you're like back-to-back meetings all day long. Or if you have time, you can go to the conference, check out the vendor floor, go to some of the actual talks. Mm-hmm. This year, I did not step foot on the vendor floor. I did not go to any talks. It was just all meetings. And then in the evenings, you have maybe a happy hour, maybe 2 dinners, and then more meetings later. I think I can't deny that there was a meeting or two in the cigar bar until 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Very easy to happen. I think, if I had to be honest, I think the evening always ends up at either the lobby of the Four Seasons or the St. Regis. And, it's usually pretty good to walk in there because you get to have a family reunion, all the people that in the industry. I loved it, catching up with those folks.
And I think a lot of people just go for the swag too. I see a lot of people toting around bags full of T-shirts and swag. I stopped doing that years ago. I think my wife will kill me if I bring home another Yeti mug or a T-shirt.
I don't understand.
Did you see any? Sorry, go ahead, Fern.
I don't understand the swag. Like, I've been to a number of events, a lot of like vendor like type events where they have tables and booths, and it's just always my feeling is, hey, take this so I don't have to throw it away, is what it feels like to me. There's never really anything at a desk or at a vendor booth where I'm just like, I've needed something like this for the longest time. Or I could really use this. Or the usual is, it's probably just going to make it in the trash and just fill up a landfill somewhere.
So let me ask you this. What would you like to see? What would
That's a great question. I was going to ask.
To walk over and say, I need to talk to that vendor because they have amazing swag. What is it?
I don't know if it's for the swag. I was at I tell you a really funny story. I was at a dinner with a guy that ran his own business, and he was looking to get into state and local contracts with vehicles, the contract vehicles and stuff like that. And I said something to him, and I said, hey, and when this is all done, maybe, we'll take you out to dinner or something. And he goes, I don't need dinner. I can buy my own food.
Ooh.
And my first thought was, wow, what a piece, I don't need dinner. I can buy my own food. But then I started thinking about it, and I kind of get it. It's like, he can just buy his own food. Like, he doesn't need anyone to buy him food. What he needs is these contract vehicles set up. Like, there was something that he needed. And I almost feel like as executives walk around or InfoSec people walk around, it's like, I don't need a USB powered fan. I just need your product to work, right? I need it to where we don't have support tickets that are going on for 10, 20, 30 days because threat actors are getting in and you guys haven't fixed this patch. And I don't necessarily care about AI or agents, AI, agentic AI. I just want this shit to work so I can sleep, right? To me, if I was in your shoes or your shoes, Troy, and I'm thinking about what these people could do for me, the swag doesn't really matter because I can get my own swag. I can go to the store.
Well, you're coming from the approach that, you were already be dealing with this vendor. But what about the ones you don't know about? So I think you said, I don't care about AI or agentic AI. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest topics at this year's RSA. Troy, was there a larger topic? Maybe data security.
So it's definitely agentic AI and AI security. So a ton of companies coming out in the AI security space, how to secure everything from your LLMs to your MCP server to everything in between. And then data security, finding and classifying and protecting data. And then also, lastly, but every single year, identity. I think identity has so many new startups and pivot points that we've seen this year. So those three were top of mind. But I wanted to ask a question of Fern before we get off the subject. I mean, these product marketers of these companies have a very hard job to have their company rise above the noise. I'll give you an example. CrowdStrike versus SentinelOne versus Trellix, not naming names, so I just named those three. But how do you build your brand above the next? How do you rise above the noise? How do you get someone's attention? And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. I did see some pretty interesting things on the show floor. I did get down there. The big, Price is Right wheel as you came down the escalators was pretty cool. I don't know who that was. Some of the stuff in the booths that they were giving away, like custom painted guitars and hugely expensive Lego sets you had to put your name in a hat for. So I think they're doing some pretty cool things just to get you in so their salespeople can talk to you. But I think these product marketers have a really tough job of trying to find the things that matter to the people they want to talk to. And so I think the most impressive swag I saw this year was some really cool T-shirts. I think T-shirts always are pretty cool. And then, of course, as you said, there's Yeti mugs and pens at every booth. So it's a difficult game.
Any cool T-shirts with good sayings? I always like a good T-shirt that has a good message on it.
Oh, I don't have one in mind, but I did see one. I'll think of it. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Should get T-shirts that say DTF with a question mark.
On a podcast.
And then on the back it says on a podcast. And then people really wouldn't understand what's going on.
So I don't think it's about the swag, but it's definitely about drawing attention to try to get the buyer's attention into something new.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these startups, to Troy's point, they can't go in, they don't have a huge budget to go in there and fight, the really large marketing dollars of some of these companies, but they may have something really cool. And I love to look at new technologies, love to look at small companies just to see what they're doing. I think that it's not the swag that drives me to visit them.
Yeah.
It's always like a connection. Somebody says, hey, take a look at this company, take a look at what they're building. And, I like to take a look at it. But I think for the normal people attending these conferences and going to the vendor hall, they like to see good swag that will draw them in. And maybe they don't know anything about that particular company, but they may stop and ask questions, watch a demo, and hopefully they remember what they saw by bringing home that swag.
So, devil's advocate here. We'll say in my life, I've worked with a lot of people, sold them a lot of stuff. People aren't buying the latest and greatest. In fact, there's people that sweat gear 10, 12 years. There's people that will spend $1 million on something and run it to the ground where you can't even get Windows updates anymore. And what I think about when I think about these events is I think about how many people are just window shopping versus how many people are actually going to implement some of these new technologies, and what's the split? Because from what I've seen, not every customer, business, client, however you want to consider them, is spending money on bleeding edge technologies. They have to be a very, very specific type of business that understands the value of security, understanding risk, and the executives that are able to make decisions to mitigate that and make purchases that could be latest and greatest. But then you have a whole slew of people that don't fit into that bucket. I almost feel like RSA might be like going into like a kid in a candy store when your parents are going to say no. And from what I've seen, not everyone's buying.
Well, you can't just look at it as, hey, I'm going there to buy something. Mm-hmm. There's still some sense of self-education to see, hey, what's coming up? Because I may not be interested in this right now, but I got to plan a strategic approach potentially over the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So what you're saying is, it's not that I have the wrong perception. It's just that people have to understand what's coming down the pipe so they can build it into this.
I think if your only approach is I only want to talk to you because you're a buyer today is wrong, right? They may be a buyer in a year, a buyer in 2 years, but they're never going to be a buyer if you never educate them, or if they never understand the concepts of things like agentic AI. That was a new term that started up last year. How many people are going to actually deploy that this year? I don't know. Yeah. Not a lot, right? There's a few who will take that chance and go and deploy it, but there's nobody saying, I'm going to do this all in this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me was, I go there to talk to a lot of these startups and find out what's the problem statement that they have identified that they're solving. A lot of times I ask myself, do I have that same, problem set? Would I write somebody a check for that? Or is it a feature I should get from my platform? And that's really the kind of the key messaging amongst some of the startups. Now we're talking startups, but, I think decision makers like myself and like Damien, we don't normally go onto the show floor. So I think that mid-level, engineer or director level, maybe spending more time on the floor than, let's say, Damien and I would. But I get a lot of value out of some of the summits and the education tracks that happen outside the conference, including some of the venture capital firms that have, half or full day summits where they bring in tremendous speakers. And I'm talking about at the highest levels of government to teach us about what's happening around the world and what's happening, in the field of cyber. So I think there's this massive disconnect between the intent of the show floor versus what, most decision makers and buyers are actually getting out of it. And I think that's just something that I've always enjoyed doing and seeing. I got on the show floor one time, but it was very quick just to do a run around and see some vendors that I know and love. But I also talked to two people this week, which kind of broke my heart. They're like, that company's not going to be around very much longer. I give you my word, they won't be here in 2 years. Talking about a company that I love. And I said, why would you say that? They're like, with AI, being able to do what they do, this company's 5 years old now, and AI is going to be able to eat their lunch within the next 6 to 12 months. I think we're going to see this massive shift in the next 12 to 18 months of, not just best in breed versus platform, but also where is AI going to just completely gut some of these segments of the industry that we are so used to talking about?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's very similar to like online education platforms and how they're battling against like GPTs of the world, right? You've kind of seen it with a handful of them or even like with Google search, where people aren't using Google as much. I, for one, do not even use Google as much as I used to, because you Google it and then you end up finding a link, reading. Now I could just go into other areas and say, hey, like, this is my problem. What do you recommend? And it's like step-by-step instructions. So it's very similar even with like online schools too. Or not online schools, but like learning platforms where people can kind of get a good idea distilled down into a 5th grade reading level from a machine, right? So I don't know. I guess it's interesting because I've never been to RSAC. I've never been to Black Hat, but I'm guessing that if I went, I'd have a better appreciation for it.
Yeah.
So this is again from the lens of scrolling LinkedIn and seeing what I see, right?
You can't measure it based off of LinkedIn.
No. Okay.
LinkedIn, to some extent, is a lot like Facebook, where people post their happiest moments in the most positive light, and they don't tell you about all the negative things too. So not that negative things happen at RSA, but I just think that everything on LinkedIn, I take with a grain of salt sometimes, because I think it's, a picture somebody's painting with the information they're putting there.
Sometimes people post obviously the best moments, and it's not always like that.
Yeah. Okay. So, I have a very skewed view of the world by not being there. Right. But I tell you one thing, I guarantee you Palo Alto did not have any women dressed in lampshades. Black Hat, did they?
They did not. No.
I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything, but I wasn't at a whole lot of events. So it's tough to know what other companies have done, and sometimes they make mistakes. I don't know. I don't think that mistake happened again though.
Yeah, that was pretty big.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't go Black Hat, but that was all over the feed. So, and nobody was happy about whoever made that decision. So
yeah, I didn't see any posts like that. I don't know, Troy, if you saw any posts.
No, I did not. Yeah, so absolutely, I think it was a big mistake, and that certainly won't happen again. But we've got to change, Fern, that you haven't been out to Black Hat. I'll host you this year. Make sure you get the full experience.
He will be there this year.
So next year, right? So I was talking with Eccles earlier today, and he was saying how he had a dinner with like 100 CISOs. He was at a dinner, and he's like, he even said, next year you have to go. And I said, okay. So I think I'm on the hook now.
I think the best dinner actually is the one that Troy and Shannon host. Sorry, I let that out there, Troy.
Yeah.
And everyone's got to hit them up now. Hey, how do I get an invite?
Yeah, it's a Monday of Black Hat, and we usually do it at a local Italian restaurant that we know the chef, and we rent out the whole restaurant and have some of our friends come out, and it's a good group of CISOs and venture capital and entrepreneurs.
I feel bad for mentioning it now because
space.
everyone now knows you have this really exclusive dinner that they're trying to get invited to.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know. I've never been to a dinner in Vegas outside of, or like a CISO dinner, right? I've been to a few, but nothing like that. So
let me ask you this, Troy. How do you decide what events to go to? I'm sure you get multiple invites. I get multiple invites as well. Sometimes I have to do certain events.
That's a great question. And I thought about this week, and I had, most people have FOMO, where you have the fear of missing out. I had the fear of letting others down, because there's so much to do, and you have these great relationships with people that want you to come to their event, and sometimes they're overlapping. So what I'll do is I'll accept multiple events, and tell the people, hey, I will come for a few minutes and then go to the next thing. Usually, like you said, it's a happy hour to another happy hour to a dinner where I'll only eat an appetizer or something, and then go to another dinner and then go to a post-dinner drinks kind of thing. But you really choose to try to just be present with people. The thing I get out of RSA is human connection. I think that cybersecurity is a people sport. I say this a lot. To me, it has nothing to do with those events. It has nothing to do with happy hours or food or drinks. It doesn't matter. It's about seeing these amazing people who I haven't seen for maybe a year, and asking them how are things going? What's new with you? Are you working on something exciting? I had a friend this week, and I won't mention his name, but I'm super excited for him, who's about to step out and do something amazing. I met him at the Four Seasons for breakfast, just the two of us. And I swear to God, I came out of there on like cloud nine just to hear this friend of mine who's about to change his life and his family's life and do something really, really cool. And I want to support him in any way. So those are the kind of things that I go for. I go for that human moment. And I think that really makes me always come out with a very positive view of RSA. All the other stuff doesn't matter, but just the fact that we have all of our friends and family in one place where we can have that chat really is awesome.
Say the same thing. A lot of it is, friends I haven't seen in years, or the ones you only see once a year at this conference. It's always good to see them, though, making sure they're doing okay and things are going well. Just getting caught up.
interesting. So would you say money is better spent at RSA if you avoid the showroom floor? Because
it depends on what your objective is. I don't, I don't view it as how am I going to spend my money? Really, it's my time, my effort.
Yeah.
What's kind of what I consider successful. It would be how many connections did I make, and how many did I rekindle, and how many did I catch up with. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily about. I don't view it as, hey, I'm going to go there to, generate business or get my profile out there at all. It's really just reconnecting with a lot of people in a single spot, and hopefully not coming back sick like Troy.
Yeah. It's funny because this is such a, maybe controversial. So I'll try to tread lightly. But as an example, if you're a small company and you're thinking about getting a booth at RSA, booths are expensive, and as we just said earlier, sometimes your decision makers are not always on the show floor. And so I think a company's money is better spent curating, a nice dinner or a nice event that you can get people to go to, rather than spending the hundreds of thousands of dollars it takes to get booth space. But I will tell you this, on the flip side of that coin is once you have a booth or a presence on the show floor, people watch if you grow, if you contract, if you have a bigger booth this year or a smaller booth this year. It's indicative of how the company's doing. And it's really this whole subculture that track this stuff. We'll be reading for the next 2 weeks about, oh my God, did you see that booth over there? It was 10 feet shorter than it was last year. What's wrong with their company? It's like the craziest thing that you can imagine. But, those things matter once you get to the point of having a booth. So be careful if you're a young startup and you're thinking about, should I get a booth or should I not? Once you do, it's kind of like, if you don't do it the following year, where'd they go? Are they going to close down?
Yeah, you're like pot committed. I guess that's kind of where I was getting at is like, I've seen some of these floors in person at other events. And that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And my first thought is like, does the marketing team actually see the ROI, or how do they attribute?
I think that's good. Let's bring a marketing person on as a guest and ask them how do they track ROI because like we mentioned before, it's not like buyers today. So you can't translate, okay, in the next 6 months, how many orders has RSA generated? It doesn't work like that. Because there may be a year or 2 year lead time, right? Of just converting that into an actual PO.
Yeah. And that's all they do, right? They cost per click-throughs, CPC, or there's so many terms in marketing that I don't even understand, but attribution is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Right. And understanding where these leads came from, getting them to sales, and then sales kind of closing it. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where my mind was going, is how do people spend all this money and justify the expense if they don't see the outcome for a few years? Because like in security, like if you have a gap in your posture, right, and you know that a certain product can fix it and you buy it, you implement it in 3 to 6 months, you see a reduction in, events or issues, like justifiably, you've spent that money well, right? You've reduced maybe the impact to the business or the risk. And this money is now, from a business leader's perspective, they've spent it well, right? I don't know if it's an easy conversation to have when it comes to marketing of these events. And that's probably where my brain was going. Never had a booth at RSA, probably never will, unless it's a DTF booth.
That'd be cool. We could have our own podcast booth where we bring in, speakers to sit down and talk with us. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. But for now, we're just 3 dudes in a studio. But when you're in town, Troy, we're gonna record in person, so you'll probably sit right here. It's cello's at.
All right, keep it warm.
But okay, so I think that's good for RSA. I don't want to kind of get too far into the weeds on RSA, but overall, sounds like it was a good event. I'm gonna have to go again next year, or not again. I'm gonna have to go next year. So that means I should probably book something before it gets to $2,000 a night, or even Black Hat this year. So I think Black Hat this year is probably the target for me. But I'll move on to the next topic before it gets too late. And for this one, I see a lot of this on LinkedIn, and it's not necessarily attributed to bad actors. It's just attributed to scams. Like how many job postings are legit, how many aren't, how many people are impersonating others through tools. We'll say AI tools. But this article specifically talks about North Korea and the things that they're doing, or people from that part of the world are doing, to get in to companies based in the U.S. without detection and earning a living, but then also potentially being a risk to the business. So, Damien.
I mean, there's 2 parts to that. The first side is, you have all these employees finding jobs, but really working in North Korea and maybe funding their government. How do we even get that far to begin with? Right? There's a lot of checks in place. I mean, number one, we were talking about RSA. So if RSA, you're invited to a meeting, how do you accept that meeting if you've never met that person before? Right?
Yeah.
At least that's in person. But I'm always worried about physical safety as well. You show up at a meeting and you get kidnapped. Worst case scenario, right? Mm-hmm. But what about in the virtual world where these jobs are virtual, and you go off of a fake LinkedIn profile as something that you trust? So I know, Troy, you mentioned this earlier. You're what are you, LinkedIn open networker? Lion, they call them?
I am not necessarily a lion. I do make sure that the person I'm connecting to is at least in the industry, right? I mean, I get a lot of connections from people who are nowhere related to tech or industry, but I do generally connect with people that are in the tech industry. I love to mentor the next generation. I love to help people, but sometimes if you're too willing to help, you'll be taken advantage of. So you got to be careful.
Part of that comes from looking at all of their past or their similar connections, right? Every connection we have in common. And sometimes that gives you
context.
Yeah. Hopefully you think, oh yeah, well, Troy is connected to this person, so he knows them. That means I should know them too, and I'll add them. So I add them, and then they reach out to you, Fern, and you look at it, you're like, oh, well, Damien and Troy know them. And then so it's snowball. You see that snowball effect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this person could be just an accident that I made, clicked on it by accident, took it. And now Damien's like, well, Troy knows the person.
now
so-
that person takes that and says, "Hey, I know so-and-so, I need a job. Can you hire me?" And at the end of the day, they're not a real person. They could be, it's a fake profile they built over, I don't know how long. Today it could take months, right? Could take years.
Well, listen, this problem, sorry, Damien, this problem is a lot more complex than just the North Korean actors, having people apply for jobs and getting in. I think that HR in general needs to have some type of checks and balances, not just for when we hire the person, because, you hire employee A and then they're on the job for a week and then employee B comes in and then the employee just keeps going and getting new jobs.
Oh, that's totally different. That's first somebody else getting the job and passing it off to someone else. So that's a totally different scam.
Yeah, so the biometrics of is our employee that we hired in a foreign country the person that we think it is, that we put through some type of testing and some type of vetting, and that's the person we believe is behind the keyboard. You can do a background check, you can do all of the things to try to make sure that your employee is not going to do something malicious inside your environment.
I've done interviews, video interviews, decided to hire a specific candidate, and then a month later, when they actually started the job, somebody else showed up.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a different person completely on video, and they pretend like they were the other person, and that you just forgot what they look like? Or?
Yeah. They're hoping that you forgot what they look like, or they're not the same person. They sent somebody else to do the interview, but it's the right name. I like that scam happens quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so is this kind of connected? This kind of HR, IT, security a topic that we should be focused on?
It's like it's the whole zero trust, but zero trust for people. Trust no one, or verify.
Most companies, once you're an employee, you have pretty much full reign. I mean, I know we talk about over provisioning, right? But if you're an engineer, as an example, you get hired as an engineer, you're going to have access to a lot of data and parts of the business. So, I mean, this is pretty big risk for a company, especially if you have secrets that you don't want to get out.
So how would you fix that? Would you say, like, for you, like, so that happened, Damien, and you hired someone else shows up, and would you say that, I'm guessing that maybe this wasn't as a bad situation like it could have been, or in some of these other cases where, intent to do harm exists, right? To me, it just sounds like someone was really good at talking, they got the job, and then someone else maybe knew how to do the work, right? But does that mean people should start like putting like guardrails around new employees for like a period of time without them knowing, or like do people already do that?
Yeah, I think that should happen regardless, right? Because you already have a lot of times you have a probationary period that you should be going through.
Yeah, but I'm talking like more so like probationary, where people everyone knows if they're on probation, like, you don't get health benefits for a certain period of time, you don't get the 401k match in a lot of cases. Like, it's kind of like if you make it past these 3 months, you get the job. But what if there are bad actors that make it past 90 days? Like, how do companies ever protect themselves? Is it just like an identity problem where they have to solve for identity versus a person in a specific role? Because to me, I would just like throw a net over everyone and say, hey, if you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing, right, then we kind of avoid these issues.
You mean
entirely.
after they're hired? So let's say they get through the whole hiring process, somebody gets through it, and then they take they slot somebody else in to actually earn the money, and maybe they take a cut, the person that did the interview.
Yeah.
Well, in the case of like North Korea, that worker, if they're actually in North Korea, that traffic has to come in somehow. So either they're hopping through a VPN, but hopefully there's a way to see that. I mean, do you allow anyone to log in from VPN services, or do you have a way to where do you even send that machine? Right? Do you send that laptop that they're working on to? You're obviously not going to send it to North Korea. You may send someone in the U.S. and that person in the U.S. forwards it on, but do you have tools to physically tell you where that machine is? I don't know. There's different things that you could probably controls you can look at to put in place, and then also see if that user's coming through a VPN, a known VPN. I mean, it's harder if they have their own private one and they're VPNing through somebody's house.
Brings up another topic about, are you shipping a controlled corporate asset out to every employee? Or you could use something like a secure browser. You could use a secure browser so they can use a malware-laden machine, but at least the company's browser is protected and you know where it is and where it's coming from. That might be a really good option for folks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't seen. I've seen. So obviously, like with certain brands out there, they have VDI, right? You can do VDI and you can kind of lock it down. But I haven't noticed that there's a lot more interest in secure browsers, enterprise browsers, right? Like one of them is called Island, right? So is that like the next thing?
That's what I was thinking. And, Palo Alto spent $650 million on Talon, which was a great, purchase for them to add the secure browser in there.
Enterprise browser and release that. So I think the enterprise browser, I think as a VDI replacement potentially, since all apps are going web-based, it is a potential.
Yeah, agreed. But here's another trip. This is like a rabbit hole. I didn't even realize it was such a rabbit hole. But think about this. In my previous roles at multiple companies, I saw where threat actors were posting on LinkedIn that we were hiring. And it wasn't us. It was somebody pretending to be us. And then they would contact their applicants. They would not only get all this personal information off the applications, but they would also ask them for money, $150 processing fee. And so many people fell victim to that, specifically in South America and India. Those were
and so that's the other way, right? So now turn it around. It's not a fake employee profile. It's a fake recruiter.
So what does the company do to protect themselves against that? Because we had no involvement. It was completely outside of us. Somebody creating our logo on a website saying that we're hiring and somebody unknowingly applying to the threat actor. We had no involvement. How would you, as a company, protect your brand?
Well, I mean, if you're looking for a job, make sure that LinkedIn profile is validated. That's an easy one.
Oh, the company page.
Yeah, a lot of people came through WhatsApp, believe it or not. They would get a text on WhatsApp, hey, we're so-and-so and we're hiring.
Is anyone actually hiring through WhatsApp? If you're a company out there, you're listening to this and you hire through WhatsApp and do your interviews, let us know. But I don't think that should be a red flag right there.
Yeah. Or when someone hits you up on LinkedIn and they say, hey, let's go over to WhatsApp real quick. Like, okay. We know what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
We know what's about to happen. I think maybe that's just a general thing, right? Anything WhatsApp where someone tries to get you off of a certain platform into another, like WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram, it should be a red flag. So if you're looking for a job or if you're hiring or you get anything from anyone that's asked you to have the form of communication outside of the norm and in a app like WhatsApp, WeChat, Telegram, or Signal, it's probably not legit. That should just be like a poster somewhere. If someone's trying to talk to you through these group chats and you don't know who they are, you've never met them, just stay away. But I feel like there's a lot of people that are in situations where they're desperate. They're looking for something to connect the dots. And, people see an opportunity to maybe make a little bit of income, feed their family, pay their bills. And they kind of overlook a lot of the security that they would otherwise, enforce in a sense.
Yeah, but use your network too, right? If you're applying for a job at a company, I'm sure you could reach out to somebody that knows somebody who works there and can validate, hey, they are hiring or that person is a real recruiter.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think on average, most people aren't necessarily tapping the network, right? They're just auto-applying, fast applying.
I don't know. How many jobs, Troy, have you gotten through just blindly applying?
No, never. I mean, usually it's a friend of a friend or a networking type of situation where the person. Now, that doesn't work for everybody. I don't want to be dismissive or assumptive here. People do go out and apply for job after job. So, but for me, it's always been a warm intro is always the best way, and knowing your network.
Yeah, I would leverage your network if you're looking for a job, right? Somebody who knows you, who knows maybe somebody else that's looking to hire. But you get an automatic reference. I always tell a lot of new in career and interns coming up through our program, I tell them build your network, build it early, because you never know where some of these people are going to work later. And through your entire, it's not the same where you just list 3 references on your resume, or you list them when they're asked for. Mm-hmm. Now everybody on your LinkedIn profile is your really the people that are going to vouch for you, and everyone you worked with, they're going to say, well, yeah, that person's a hard worker, or no, definitely don't hire that person. And you can't you can't say, oh no, don't call those people, because somebody's going to know somebody that's going to, give the real reference.
Yeah, I would say out of all the people that I've spoken with, with the other podcast, no, it's really hard to get into security, and it's even harder if you do it without some sort of referral or referral from someone that works at the company. It's basically impossible. And as one of the guests said, security is not an entry level job, right?
I don't know. I agree, but there are entry level security jobs that you can. It can benefit people starting their careers, and they can jump into it. But you want to plug your podcast real quick? I don't think we really mentioned it on this show.
I don't know if I would call it a podcast. I think I'd call it more so a way to meet really cool people, really interesting people, and learn a little bit about the world of security. And mostly people's stories, right? That's kind of how we met, right? And
I was just for the record, I was never on that podcast. I said, hell no. Yeah, I'm not doing it.
He said no. He said no. So I had to get the story without the cameras. On the trip to Vegas, actually, we essentially did a 12-hour podcast, and you didn't even realize it. And then
he social engineered me for 12 hours.
Yeah,
without recording it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was had you as a captive audience for that. And then for the AWS, it was like 3 or 4 days. So, we did a podcast. You just didn't realize it. But yeah, it's like a little side fun project that I do. Troy, I don't think you've seen it, but it's just called In the Thick of It. So
we'll put the link below. You guys can check it out.
Yeah,
some really interesting guests, and I know most of them. They're really good stories.
Yeah, and I think the main part of it is just to kind of tell the stories that are really hard for people to make time to tell, right? Like, when was the last time? So, upcoming episode, right, is Ryan Murray for State of Arizona, CISO for the State of Arizona. And I asked him about the suit. He's always 3-piece suit everywhere he goes. And I got the story, and it turns out it actually started when he was in high school. So I won't spoil it for anyone, but that is, I think, the very first question that I asked him. So a lot of people see him. They see him in the suit with the hat, the fedora, and they just think, okay, cool. But no one, I don't think anyone's really ever asked him. And I have proof of him at high school age, right?
I like that, because you have a style that people recognize, and it's like your own personal brand, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of cool.
So yeah, we'll link it on this one, but right now we're trying to be DTF.
Yes, we are.
We got to get
personal brand for me. Thanks to Carl Mattson. I think you know Carl. Invited me to an event in Atlanta, Georgia, where I walked away with a sports jacket. It was amazing. So I wear it everywhere I go. And as this,
there you go. That's
conference. We're always wearing the same
swag.
One.
That's swag that drew you in.
Swag. So one of these days, I want to do an event where it's bespoke suits and shoes. Now, I don't think anyone's ever done that. No, I happen to know a guy that flies in to do that for here locally for a few people that I know, myself included. It's just been a while since I bought anything. I think that would be a really good
Where does he fly in from?
Singapore.
I got some people in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really good quality, custom made. He measures it. He comes in with his wife. He has a booklet and everything. I think, maybe not even an event, but just do an event where people come in and see him and just bring him the business. It's not even like a sponsored event. Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey.
How many subscribers do we need for DTF to be able to give away a custom suit?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say 500. I think 500 would be a good number.
I think that was the number I was thinking. Exactly. 500 subscribers, and we're going to use somebody in that subscriber list for a custom suit.
I think that'd be easy because it wouldn't be a very tough thing to pay for. So how about this? We'll throw this out there. This is the offer. 500 subscribers on the DTF podcast by a certain date, right? If we get to what? I don't know.
End of May? I think, we can hit it end of May.
By end of May. By the end of May, if we can get that, I will personally have Sandy do a coat for someone.
All right.
That's out there. It's on the record. We'll see
Fair
if
enough.
anyone.
So one of those 500 people who get in.
Yeah. Now I just got to figure out how you pick them. So you pick them and then.
Oh, there's apps that do that. You just put the subscriber base in.
Okay.
They could, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, that's out there. So now I'm on the hook for that. I'm on the hook for RSA. I'm on the hook for a jacket. Everyone's on the hook for the subscribers. But so we were talking about people in Korea.
Well,
North Korea.
The other scam that they have
Is
the cryptocurrency taking over people's Zoom, like getting you into a Zoom session and then taking over your laptop or your machine, remote control, and installing malware.
And then stealing your wallet, essentially, and draining your wallet.
Yeah. So but again, how do they get there? Some sort of social engineering has to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so that's what's interesting too, is like if someone's looking for a job or applying and they get a message from someone that's random and says, hey, here's a link to our app. We do all of our interviews remotely through this application. I don't think people are going to question that normally, or at least maybe not initially.
How about I get you to install malware by saying, here's a capture the flag application, run it. If you can break into it, we'll give you the job.
Ooh.
Yeah. You better be smart enough to put that into a VM or something.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it's a safe world for anyone.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're here, right? Education. But Damien, was that a Zoom vulnerability, and have they patched it, or was it just social engineering completely?
It's not a vulnerability. I think Zoom has the feature, and a lot of help desks will use the Zoom feature to allow somebody to remote control their machine for support purposes. Makes sense, right? I mean, we've had tools like that for decades. Take the remote control. Mm-hmm. This one just happens to happen over Zoom, and it's very quick. They just easily go in. They don't even have to go find your wallet at that time. They just go install a piece of malware and get it later. Or even the malware could be grabbing credentials. You name it, right? Once they get that package installed, and it may only take 2 seconds, you're going to be in trouble. You may not even recognize it until months later, potentially.
Yeah, but the problem there is the people that know how to avoid that are in security. And
this is not just a security problem. I mean, think about maybe your parents, or your wife applying for a job at a doctor's office as an administrator. Mm-hmm. Right? Hey, let's do this Zoom call. We'll do an interview.
Click.
Oh, wait a second. Can I just get control of your machine for a second? Or even because it asks you.
Yeah.
You could, oh, sorry, I accidentally did that if you catch it. Or you might actually click it by accident. Mm-hmm. The interviewer might say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But, let me check to see what applications you have on your computer, see if you qualify. Well, yeah, you got to work from home.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I think it's really hard to get this by someone that's in security. Way easier to get it by anyone that's not in security. Because
I don't know about that. I think in security, sure, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone should be more alert. But I'll tell you, just normal phishing campaigns. I don't know what the click rate is, but I know some industries it's still over 10%. People click on those educational phishing campaigns.
Yeah, I think the Gartner benchmark's 12% at this point in time.
12%, yeah.
So 12% of people will fail?
Yeah. For
a generally, easy to spot fish, yeah. See, there's different difficulties of fishes. You can make them so hard that almost everybody fails. Really.
But then if you look at cybersecurity employees, I think you're probably sitting about 5% still. So 12% is probably the overall company score. Mm-hmm. But there's still going to be a few people within cybersecurity or even IT that click on it. So you just need one, right? You just need one person to click or one person to allow access to the Zoom to your laptop.
Yeah. One person or even just one person that has money. right? If you have, I think, so there was a report that talked about the FBI report, right? It said the average take on an incident, like for personal or people that are taken personally, I want to say it was like 20,000.
The ones that are reported.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the percentage of people actually reporting them. So if 20,000 report, there's probably another 50,000 that don't.
Oh no, $20,000.
Oh, dollars.
So on average, it was either. See, I wish I had the article. It was either 20,000 or 40,000, like 39,000. I think it was the article that Troy had sent me, where it talked about of the reported incidents of the large number of total volume that happened in 2024. The average take was it might have been like 39,000 or 29,000, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
like that's at least 6 months of living expenses for a lot of people, or even more, right? So how do people even fight that? Like what are you supposed to do now? Like
offline wallet. The people have offline wallets, and then they forget the passphrase. And I've heard stories, right? You always hear stories of somebody having that offline wallet on a USB drive somewhere encrypted, and they don't remember the passphrase.
Yeah,
and they can't get back into it.
Like the guy that lost it in the dump, and he was sitting there, and you can only get like so many password attempts, and if you get it wrong, the wallet's just like dusted off.
Well, the guy that lost it in the dump, didn't he buy the entire dump?
I don't know.
I thought I heard that.
He was trying to. Yeah, he was trying to. It would be worth it
if you find it. If you don't, you just went through a lot of garbage.
So he tried to buy the facility to look for his drive.
Yeah, I think something like that. We got to find the article.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were able to narrow down the area where they were dumping trash that day in the landfill, and so he knows approximately where it is, how deep it is, and all this stuff. So he's hopeful that if he's able to recover it, it'll be worth the time and effort.
Huh. Well, I guess speaking of searching through trash, how about that we get to the last article about the S3 bucket. So I don't want to misspeak, but when I read that article, from what I understood was there are these companies that, or is it one company in particular that had an unsecured S3 bucket, and what they were doing was they were taking screenshots or screen captures from their users, like every 20 seconds, and then loading it into this bucket. Yep. Now, there was no proof that anything happened, right? So just say that. Nothing alleged, nothing even that anyone was aware of.
Well, just so for those people that don't know what an S3 bucket is.
Okay.
Right. It's really just a data storage repository that sits within AWS. And think of it as a large file store. And what probably happened here is that S3 bucket, the file store was just left open. The door was left open. There's a lot of people scanning. You talk about searching for garbage. A lot of people scanning these S3 buckets for ones that are left open.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising if you have an S3 bucket that's left open, any data in there would potentially be taken or copied. So now this company, I think it's called Work Composer. Their whole model is to monitor remote workers. And so we're back to the remote worker problem again. Yeah. So the remote workers, as they're working from home, you want to make sure that they're doing their jobs. And what these guys do is they just take that snapshot of the screenshot, and then they store that. And they do this for multiple companies. So now if you're a customer and you have screenshots of your maybe customer information, proprietary information, I don't know what are these employees working on, but if those screenshots were taken every minute, every 30 seconds, stored in S3 bucket, you could consider them gone.
Yeah. Well, so maybe you guys can answer this, because I've seen this personally. Have you guys ever tried to take a screen capture on like not like a webinar, but not even a WebEx, but like an online meeting, and you go to do the snippet tool and you take it, and then everything is just black? Have you guys had that where it does that? Or intently, the intent is to where whatever's on the screen, you can't copy it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So why wouldn't companies that have users with access to PII information or anything of that matter. If the command is to do a screen capture, isn't there a way to block certain fields?
No,
within
but the companies are wanting that screen capture to validate that the employee's not sitting there watching YouTube all day.
Well, yeah, but like in most of these applications, they're built off of forms, right? Forms are built off of like objects and classes and things like that, and you can define certain things like programmatically of what ASCII texts are tagged to certain properties, right? Whether it's PII. And so like this is more like on the application development side, like where people could do that. Like if you have these frameworks, you know that this subset of text hits a bucket that should be protected. So is there, I guess maybe my question is like these companies that have access to the information, are they building secure applications? Or is it up to the person that
So
owns
I
it?
think where you're getting at here is I don't think there's a problem storing data in the S3 bucket. A lot of companies do that.
Yeah.
The purpose of this one is a little bit different, but I think a lot of companies store data in S3 buckets or any other cloud storage repository. But what you should be having is at least a tool to go back and check to make sure you close the door.
Okay.
Right? So
how would you do that?
there's tools out there. Right?
Okay.
So you can take a look at anything in the space of CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, or CNAP, right?
Okay.
Troy, did you ever deploy any of those?
Oh yeah, at scale too. So I mean, if you're going to have a presence in the public cloud or any of the hyperscalers like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, you definitely need a tool to make sure that you're configuring it properly, right? Because it is so complex and they have all these intricacies of dependencies within the environment that you need a tool, like you said, a CSPM or CNAP, to go in and tell you that you haven't left the door wide open. And, we have seen so many major breaches that are tied to something just like this, whether it's an Azure Blob Storage, whether it's a Google bucket or an S3 bucket from Amazon. People just don't even realize that they have this information available to the world. And so this is yet another case of somebody did not protect their cloud. So that's the kind of underlying, how did this happen? But kind of ask the question, this type of software for employee monitoring, we talked a little bit about this, pre-recording about, you're really intrusive, looking at screenshots every few seconds of what the employee is doing during the day. In security and in IT, that would never fly, right? I mean, we have to build a culture of trust. We have to build a culture of inclusion and a place where people want to come to work. And if you can't trust your employees to do the job based on the outcomes and the goals that you've defined, then you're going to have a hard time keeping talent in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's never about, a number of hours or a number of tickets. If you're in an IT help desk or in a SOC, which it's really outcomes like Troy said. We want to have really solid outcomes and goals for these teams. I couldn't imagine working for an organization that's
Babysits you?
Yeah, that's looking over your shoulder every minute and just making sure that you are doing ABC. Mm-hmm. Because, what if you want to take a break? You want to listen to the DTF podcast for 20 minutes and in between, to reset and then go at it again. Right. So I think if you have a goal to say, look, here's the project, here's the task, this is what you need to accomplish. Can you get it done by the end of the week? Then that's all that matters. It doesn't really matter when that employee is working. Now, the other side to that is if you're in a SOC, we have to cover that 24/7. So obviously we can't have gaps in coverage.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be sitting there watching for alerts. It's easier today because we have a lot of automations.
Yeah.
Eventually we'll have agentic AI and AI SOC agents, which we can talk about in future episodes. But that's a little bit different, right? We have to, somebody's got to be really watching the screen.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about the SOC is you can really tell mean time to detection, right? Because you can see when the alert fired and how quickly it was ticketed and triaged and so on. So if they're asleep at the wheel, so to speak, that's a self-correcting error, I think.
Right, but you don't need to watch every single ticket. You just need to watch the trends and the result of mean time to detection, just addressing the issue, and then hopefully closing it out.
Okay. Yeah, I've never worked in a SOC, so I can only imagine how stressful that job is. Just getting alert after alert after alert.
So I think with automations, those alerts kind of become easier. Mm-hmm. Where it becomes stressful is when you have an incident, or you think you have an incident. Could be a real one, could be a fake one. We don't know. False positives are huge.
Yeah. So that wasn't necessarily an article, but it is an interesting topic. Incident response, right? And we probably have a few minutes before it gets too late, but maybe save it for next week. Or maybe like tap on it, do a little quick something on it, because I'm curious for both of you, right? How, based on not where you work or where you've worked, based on the people that you know and the friends that you have in these different circles, how important is incident response for these organizations compared to revenue generation? Because I would be curious on how people kind of prioritize incident response.
It depends on the industry. Okay. Are you specifically saying the tech industry? Because I think financials have probably a different take on it. Healthcare probably has a different take on it. I don't think any of them will say, no, that's not important. They're all important to different degrees.
Yeah.
Some of them you will want to own it and build it yourself. Mm-hmm. And then some companies may realize, hey, I don't have the expertise to do that. And then they'll outsource it to an MSSP. And so the MSSP then takes it and manages their SOC and then also incident response. And so you can always have an incident response retainer for third parties that can come in and help you later, because there's no way you're going to have all that expertise on your team on day one when you have a real incident.
Yeah, it's funny that you attribute the two to revenue generation, because I think the company has to make money, or you don't have a company anymore, you don't have a SOC anymore. So we always said cyber should be an enabler to the business to make money. Just like IT keeps the lights on and the pipes flowing, security is there to keep the data secure, keep the company secure from operational outage, litigation risk, or other data exfiltration. But I think, and I'm very passionate about incident response, because that's where I believe the rubber meets the road. Honestly, that's where you're watching all this telemetry, which is the data from all of your tools in a single place, which is the SOC. So in other words, you're funneling massive amounts of machine data from all these firewalls and endpoints and all this stuff into a central data repository. And that's where you're able to apply AI analytics or something and look and see, find that needle in the stack of needles to see what the bad guys are doing. Because we're talking about billions of events a day, billions. So-and-so logged on, so-and-so logged off. I mean, all that stuff, and coming down to what an attack is, what a breach is, what is, normal, what is not normal. Those kind of things take a lot of time. And I have worked with some absolute superstars in the SOC, and they are invaluable. And I think that incident response is something we could talk about for like an hour, and definitely deserves it.
Okay. I think we definitely say that for a future episode, because it's definitely another part of the world of cyber that I don't understand. Right? So that's a nice part about this too, is I get to sit with two experts and ask random questions, or maybe not necessarily random, but maybe perspective from outside of the security engineering world, right? I get to be the voice of the common.
Well, what's kind of cool is that as we get these going, we can bring in a guest, right? I know we have a lot of friends working in the AI SOC space, so we can bring in and talk to them. Even people that work in the SOC and have dealt with incidents, if they're willing to talk about it. Sometimes it's hard to get some people who've actually been through a major incident to talk about what that entailed. I mean, it's kind of hard, but it'd be nice if we can get somebody in to talk about what it's like to go through a real incident.
Yeah. And I think the only time they'll be willing to do that is if they're not working at the company anymore. Because
even still, we might have to anonymize them, put the whole blurry face and the voice changer.
The voice changer, put them in a dark shadow.
Yeah.
Make them look like just a silhouette. Give them the robot voice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we could do that, because I think, part of what I like about having you guys, teach me in this way is that I get to learn a lot more about kind of the day-to-day stuff and really how the news affects your day-to-day, right? So top things that we covered today. RSA. Is it worth the money? To be determined. I'll let you guys know in a year from now what I think. We know both of you guys enjoy. So RSA and then the North Korean bad actors getting in through interviews and using tools to do things that they shouldn't be doing. Then that went into people that are applying for jobs as almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Well, I think both of those had fake profiles in the mix.
Yeah. So
social engineering. So just if you're watching this and you haven't looked at your LinkedIn lately, make sure you're not just accepting blindly people that reach out to connect.
Yeah. And I think the easiest thing that you can do, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a way where you can click on, if you go to someone's profile, just below their picture, it says like about or more. You can click on that and actually see when that profile was created. And chances are if it was created within the last week and they've got tons of connections, it's definitely not real. It kind of reminds me of a lot of like Facebook, where you see like Facebook Marketplace, where people will post things and then you click on it and they've got like one friend. So that's another thing too. There's a lot of scams going on LinkedIn especially, but if you go to LinkedIn and you go through the profile, there is a section that you can actually click on to see when it was created. And that'll at least give you some sort of context into.
You know what I like to do? I like to take the profile image and
search it.
Or you can even ask AI, who is this person?
Really?
Yeah. See what it comes back with.
Did you do that for me?
I'm going to now.
Okay. And then, so now that's a little creepy. I wonder what it says. But it'll probably just say something to do with the podcast or two.
We'll do it and we'll see if we can overlay the image at the end of this.
Yeah. Well, what does it say about it? I've never Googled myself. I'm just afraid what it's gonna tell me. And then we got into a little bit of incident response. So I don't know. I think we covered a lot of good things today. My favorite was probably RSA. Definitely seems like a party. And when I was at ASU, I went to zero party. So I'm definitely due for a party.
Not about the parties.
No, I mean like a party for me.
Oh, for you?
For me, I would make RSA a party.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And don't forget, Fern is going to buy...
Oh, the suits.
A suit. No, it was a jacket. Right?
Just like the blazer.
A blazer. Custom made.
500. Here's the promise. If we get to 500 subs by the end of May, today is Cinco de Mayo. We're all about to go party with Cinco de Mayo style. But if we get to the end of May and there's 500 subscribers, yours truly will personally invest in a custom tailored blazer for men and women.
Yeah.
I have a friend that just bought a work blazer, and she was telling me how it was a few $1,000s. So it's not going to be that nice, but it'll be nice. It'll be nice. With their name sewn on the inside so no one can steal it. So if you're listening and you got this far, just hit the sub button. Please drain my bank account. Any closing words, guys?
No, as usual. Thanks for the conversation. And for those of you guys that are listening to this or watching, this is typically our conversations when we're sitting around just having a drink. This is actually how the podcast came about. A lot of the topics we talked about, we said, hey, we should record that. Hey, we should talk about that. And here we are.
Yeah. Having cigars at the local cigar bar here in Arizona.
Or Vegas.
So if you're big on cigars and you're in the security world, let us know. Maybe we'll start doing like a cigar meetup, right? BYOC, bring your own cigars, go to the cigar bar and commiserate with fellow security.
I was at an event, and this vendor, talk about swag. This vendor brought in a cigar roller, and he would hand roll the cigars for you, and then put their logo band on it. Isn't that cool?
Oh, is that the one you sent me the picture of?
Yeah.
They were rolling them in person?
Yeah.
Wow. At the golf event?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's plenty of options. But the only way to get to that is people have to subscribe.
Yeah.
And when I look at the stats on the YouTube, 82% of people that listen to the last episode are not subscribed. What does that tell me? That number should be 0 by next week after Cinco de Mayo. The episode for Cinco de Mayo for today goes out because everyone's going to want a blazer.
All right, Fern, you got any catchy phrase to end this off with?
I forgot to think about that, to be honest with you.
All right.
So I don't have anything to send off everyone, but we'll think of something cool for the next one.
On to the next. Cheers, everybody.
Aaron.
We're out.